Hey, we want to thank Bill.com for sponsoring the Thrivecast. We've been using Bill.com in our own firm for many years with a sweet new user interface. It's an AI-enabled platform, international payments, all kind of things. We love Bill.com. Bill.com, thank you for sponsoring the Thrivecast. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Thrivecast. We love to teach and help firms structure and grow really all over the world. And of course, Thriveal does that in a lot of different ways with our events, conferences, live things that we do. And we do a lot of consulting and coaching with firms too that are, trying to figure out growth. Growth is a complex thing, especially when you do it with service-based companies. Just a tricky thing to figure out. The more people you have, the more humans you have to figure out. And so we have experts come on the show, and y'all know our next guest really well, Tim Williams. He has spoken at our conferences. He's been on the Thrivecast before, and I just want to give a quick intro for those of you living under a rock that don't know who Tim Williams is. He has been doing this forever, so he's been in his career for so long, and he's just a globally recognized expert, business, pricing, strategy, just written books. He's been in the Economist, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Bloomberg News, The Guardian, Europe and Asia, all over the place, and really before the pandemic traveled extensively, really just consulting and leading agencies, and does a lot of work with firms too. And really his book, Positioning for Professionals, I read probably going on a decade ago, was really just a foundation to how I thought about building a firm. So he's probably one of the greater influences on me in the work he does. And of course, if you're not subscribed to his to some of the work that he puts out, his blog posts, they're long form, they're really good. They're probably well read, I imagine, if you look at his statistics, because they're kind of something you keep in your inbox for a long time. So I could keep talking about Tim, but let me welcome Tim to the show. So Tim, thanks for coming on the Thrivecast. We appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Jason. I'm delighted to be back.
Very cool. Well, we've had you at conferences and we've had you on the podcast before Greg Kite retired. And so now I get you all to myself to learn all of the goodness that you have to share with accounting firms. And so I really want to dive into positioning. That is one of your expertise. You wrote a book, Positioning for Professionals. So you better be good at it, I would imagine, if you're writing a book like that. So, but Tim, what are you doing now in the pandemic? I'm just curious, like what you're up to. You are a consultant, teacher. What has the pandemic done to a consultant, or how do you now approach your market? How do you position yourself is kind of what I'm interested in.
Yeah, I imagine we've all had similar experiences in this business because the consulting business I run is a professional service business like all of you.
Yeah.
So I imagine we've had the same experience. We've been surprised that we've been able to maintain most, or in some cases, all of our client relationships virtually. So instead of being on airplanes, I've been able to do this online. It's I miss the personal interaction, but I think we've all been able to manage.
Yeah, nice. Well, cool. Well, so Tim, let's just dive into positioning. I think it's something accounting firms need to figure out. And on the Thrivecast, we're doing a couple of shows, really just a series on positioning. So what is that term? Like, what does it mean? What does it not mean? I mean, what does the word positioning mean?
Yeah, I rarely get answered that question, and it's a great question because it's a strange term, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it gets confused with is it synonymous with business strategy? Is positioning the same thing as, say, a value proposition? I mean, there are lots of ways you could describe it.
Yeah.
It was really, the history of it. The term was coined for the most part by a couple of ad professionals, Trout and Reese, who wrote a book in the 70s called Positioning: The Battle for Your Mind.
Wow.
And their idea was, the human brain is carved up into, sections where we as consumers, we assign these sections of the brain to different brands, and we associate different brands and companies with different areas of expertise. So they're classic examples. Who owns the position of safety in the automotive world? Volvo.
Yeah, Volvo, yeah.
Who owns the position in shipping? Who owns position of reliability? That would be FedEx. And so their argument was that you as a company can own a section of the brain of your target market, and what do you want that to be? What do you want it to stand for? So literally a position, as in positioning, is kind of how this all originated.
Okay, so you can own the brain of the market you're targeting. So, like I would have said, you own a market, right? But you're going even further into the human. It's like, no, you actually, in that human's mind, you own what they believe about you. Is that what you mean?
Right. Yeah, that's right. You're owning a piece of the brain. They argue that in most categories, customers will assign 3 different spaces. I mean, there's a little ladder in each section. For cars, you've got a little ladder in your brain, and there's 3 brands on that ladder, and there are 3 leading companies in almost every category. They would say up to 7. I mean, the human mind, and Stephen Covey taught this as well, that we can remember up to 7 brands of toothpaste, because that's, the 7 dwarfs, 7 wonders of the world. I mean, there's something about 7. But your goal is to be in the 3 in your chosen category.
Okay. So you're going to, is it true if you're positioning well, you're going to have competitors? Or you're going to know your competitors? Or are you trying to move away from your competitors? If you're becoming positioning, or if you're positioning, you're trying to own your market. How does that work with competitors? Also
an excellent question. And the ultimate business strategy is to be in a category of one. So, that's a great question. So if you can be if that's the blue ocean, then you know these comparisons, blue ocean, red ocean. So the blue ocean is you're out there all by yourself. You're in a category of one. That's the ultimate.
Yeah.
And very few firms get there, but some do. And then they wait for others to start copying them.
That's right. Well, and that's what happens, right? When you do something great, you will be copied. So, and I guess that sometimes that feels good, but it's kind of freaky when people start copying you. But I guess that's maybe the result of positioning. Positioning comes with things, I guess, right?
What do you mean exactly?
Well, is there a consequence to positioning? If you position, I guess it means you're narrowing. And is there a consequence to narrowing? Is scary to some people, and it's a risk to take, and it's exciting for other people. But are there results to positioning that are good and bad?
Of course, yeah. I talk about this as the fear of focus, as opposed to the benefits of focus. So we have a lot of human tendencies that make us afraid of focus, because it feels to us like we'll be missing some opportunities, we'll be leaving money on the table. Isn't it better to try and present as many doors through which you can hire our business as possible? So the tendency to copy, it runs very deep in the human psyche. I mean, the anthropologists say it's the deepest habit that we have, because it served us pretty well, tens of thousands of years ago when we were copying successful hunting strategies, right? But in the business world, it completely works against our best interests, because we're just engaging in what I think is a great way to think about it, karaoke capitalism. I mean, everybody's looking and saying and doing the same thing. So, lots of fear around it, but the benefits far outweigh any of the risks. I mean, strategy's trade-offs.
Yeah,
that's one of my all-time favorite definitions of positioning strategy is its trade-offs. It's deciding not just what you are, that's the easy part, but what you're not. We're going to do this, but not that. We're going to stand for this, but not that. We're going to go after this market, but not that market. And so those are the difficult sets of choices that companies have to make. Strategy is about choice. So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and this next question kind of takes us into that, and I think that's one profound effect. Your book, Positioning for Professionals, which if people haven't read that book, it really just is it's a timeless book. I don't know if you meant to build it that way. It's very
Yeah,
just a very it's a very theoretical book that teaches a lot about that, and that's where I learned that being strategic is the choices of saying no. That's also what it is. And in that book, you mentioned the 5 S's: the services, staffing, self-promotion, systems, and staging of positioning. And is one of those more important than the other in a market like this where we can't figure out what the heck is going on? Like, why our leads come in floods and then they dry up overnight and we can't hire anybody? Everybody's struggling with finding labor. So how does positioning reflect those things when we're in really weird markets? I mean, is it different?
Yeah. Well, the 5 S's, as I call them, are really the areas in which your positioning strategy must come to life in order for you to have an authentic strategy in the first place. So they have to come to life. You put a stake in the ground in terms of the markets you serve and the services you offer. Those are the 2 essential questions.
Okay.
Then you've got that. Then has to be in alignment with your services, which is your competencies, the staffing, meaning the way you hire, train, and develop your staff. Self-promotion, that's an obvious one. That's what your website says and your what you say in social media, etc. Systems, this is less obvious, but sometimes your positioning strategy can impact the way you are organized internally and the way you get your work done.
Yeah.
And the final is staging, and this is your physical and virtual place of business, so the touch points of your own brand. So to the question, is one S more critical or more important than the others in these strange times in which we find ourselves? That's a difficult question. I mean, I always say that services is the most important of the 5 in the sense that you've got to truly be living your brand. I think that the self-promotion piece is where most prospects learn about you, and so the statistic that I believe to be true that 100% of your prospects will look at your website, like not just most of them, but like all of them.
Yeah,
that makes the website pretty important, pretty critical. And I've written separately about this, the mistakes that most firms make on their website. The big one is just their unwillingness right up front on their homepage to say, this is who we are and this is what we do. Right? Yeah. Don't make us dig and work and read through I mean, most firms do so much or try so hard to avoid saying what they stand for, right? They don't want to, because they feel like, well, if we do that, then maybe our prospect is not going to relate to that, and they'll look for another firm. Well, actually, we want them to go look for another firm if it's not a good fit for us.
Yeah. Well, it seems counterintuitive. Positioning seems counterintuitive to the human, right? Because the human is always looking for safety, right? And so business requires a lot of risk-taking, claiming things you feel uncomfortable with about yourself. And so positioning is fighting even the human psyche of the owner a lot of times. Do you feel that's true?
Definitely. It's the biggest barriers to positioning strategy are not external. They're internal.
Nice.
They're the resistance that we have just to the idea, and also the people inside our firm who also don't get it. And it's ironic, especially in the advertising agency business where I spent most of my life.
Yeah.
These are firms that are in the business of helping their clients get a good objective view from the outside in. Yet it's internally difficult for them to do it for themselves because they lack the objectivity and they just don't take their own medicine. I mean, it's true in every profession, right? It's the dentist with bad teeth.
Right, right. But I mean, it's kind of weird at first when you do approach an agency and you're like, wow, you don't position yourself well, but you claim that you can do that for other people. But that's a human issue we all struggle
It's a
with,
human
right?
issue.
Of
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
wanting to say who we are because we don't want to be rejected. That's a
Hmm.
core
Yeah.
to a human. So there is risk in positioning, right? You may be actually you want to be rejected by the wrong people. Is that the goal?
That's right.
Positioning? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we want, and again, there's a lot of psychological resistance to this, but we want to be polarizing.
Mm,
We want some people to love us and some people to hate us. I mean, that's
that's
really
wild.
hard to get used to because we
Yeah.
want, if you think about the world's best, most successful brands, they all have strong lovers and strong haters, right?
Yeah, for
New York
sure.
Times, Red Sox,
Yeah.
Starbucks. I mean, you name it, lovers and haters. So
Yeah.
if you don't have lovers and haters, then you're living in the mushy middle, and it's a sign that you don't have a positioning strategy. So we love the lovers part.
Right.
We're really uncomfortable with the haters part, and hate's too strong a word. It's
Yeah.
just this idea of people who don't relate to what you do and what you sell, and that's fine. We can't. It's like the famous Bill Bernbach quote. He's one of the iconic early madmen, actually.
Yeah.
He says if you stand for something, you'll find people who are for you and people who are against you. If you stand for nothing, you'll find nobody for you and nobody against you.
Mm.
So, which would you rather have?
Yeah, really. Well, one thing I learned that's related to this, one thing I learned from you is that every dollar is not a good dollar, right? So every dollar, dollars represent something behind it. So the flip side of positioning well and wanting to move people on that are not right for you is that it is super dangerous to get people into your firm that are wrong for you because you
Yeah,
can't get them out. It's really difficult to unserve them and to untangle from a scoped written contract at that point. And so
yeah,
the opposite side is letting the wrong people in is really what destroys client bases. And so when in a lot of our consulting, we know when we approach them, client bases are really wrong most of the time. And so a lot of times we got to cut through those and really remove a lot of clients. That's kind of removing the sickness before you can actually start working on positioning. And that's a harder task than the boldness it takes to position clearly on a site, it feels like. Do you
yeah.
find that like people are letting the wrong people in, and that's more damaging than the fear of pushing off the wrong people?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like our mutual friend Ron Baker says: bad clients drive out good clients, and
Yeah,
that happens. That happens continually in professional firms.
yeah,
It demoralizes your people. It makes them
yeah.
feel like they don't enjoy their jobs, that their
Mm,
clients don't appreciate them. Um, we know that as knowledge workers, and this is in the work of Daniel Pink and others in the book Drive.
mm-hmm.
It's one of my
Yep.
favorite reads on this topic. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
why do professionals do what they do?
Mm,
And it has nothing to do really with money. Of course, we need to earn a paycheck and pay our bills, but we work for a sense of accomplishment.
yeah.
And if we've got a client base that doesn't appreciate what we do and abuses the relationship, then nothing else matters if we can't keep premium talent on our team. So yeah, not every dollar is a good dollar. Uh, I having a small client base that is a good fit with your firm outweighs any of the benefits of size and so-called economies of scale, and that's a whole other topic. But I know you want to talk a little bit about that. The advantages of bigness
Yeah.
are a lot less important than they used to be. I mean, I would argue they were never
Hmm.
really that relevant in professional services to begin
Yeah.
with. But today, I think we see in every aspect of professional services the idea of big as a competitive advantage is just less and less true. Clients are looking not for a one-stop shop, not someone who can do it all. They are looking for what they describe as best-in-class specialists.
Hmm.
So you can be a best-in-class specialist in a firm of 17 people in any city
Oh
in
yeah.
any region of the world. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be in New York or Chicago. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Size and location are increasingly irrelevant. So a
Mm.
good positioning strategy can net you clients that are thousands of miles away, who are looking for someone who is an expert in the area that they're trying to address.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that happens to us as we've narrowed in our own firm to creative digital agencies, which you have referred clients to us a lot. It really, they do find a lot of benefit just in knowing our claim to be that, right? Now, one of
Yeah,
your
yeah,
S's is we got to pull off our claim, right? When they come in and pay us a lot of money, we got to actually pull off the service, which is a harder part of the positioning, right, on the website,
yeah,
but it is a part of it.
yeah.
And so I remember that from your book. I'm going to probably say that 100 times. That book was so good, that size is no strategy, right? That just a bulkiness is not a strategy at all. It doesn't have anything to do with it. But now okay, so probably in our market, accounting firms, let's say there's 40,000 firms in the U.S. There's like 1 to 2% that are just the humongous ones, right? The big ones.
Yeah, yeah.
How did they get that big? Like, they're pretty much generalists. They're just like that
Hmm.
seems to be working, right? E and Y. It's like that looks like it's working, Tim. So
Hmm.
why isn't big working for E and Y? It seems to be.
Yeah, it's working less well, in the sense that it's no longer. Well, let me backtrack. There's still a need for large firms, and
Mm,
this is true in advertising and law and other areas,
yeah.
architecture.
Hmm.
Um, Large multinational client companies with a footprint in 144 markets
Yeah.
need a business partner that can match that.
Okay. Yeah.
So local geographical representation for, let's take a big global brand from a company like Unilever.
Yeah.
Having a single agency that understands that brand and can represent that brand, Lifebuoy soap, represent that brand on the ground in Dubai as well as Los
Mm,
Angeles.
mm,
There's a benefit to that. So
yeah.
that's the business strategy of multinational accounting firms, advertising agencies, law firms, is
Okay.
largely built around geographical representation.
Mm.
It's not the dollar volume that is the point. It's the number and location of offices.
Okay. So they're just big enough to handle the big clients that have to have a big firm, basically.
Yeah,
But
geographically.
yeah, okay. But generally, what you're talking about, it applies to 95% of firms. It's like really narrowing what you do, hand picking those clients, letting the choice be yours to let those clients come into your firm. That is what really works now. And you're saying more so now than ever. Is that because our
Yeah.
world even has been forced to be more digital now? Is that why?
Well, it's because we live in the age of hyper specialization.
Mm,
We live in the long tail. The
mm,
Chris Anderson's book, the long Tail, really explains
yeah.
this whole phenomenon where the short tail, fewer and fewer things live in the short tail. So the short tail are blockbuster movies and best selling books and
Mm,
things that have a broad global appeal. Fewer and fewer of those. Most of what is available to us as consumers lives in the long tail, meaning there's incredible choice and diversity. You can find anything you possibly would want in a Google
mm,
search. It
yeah.
lives out there in the long tail. And so the same argument applies in professional services, that the firms that live in the short tail that try to be this one-stop shop, that are everywhere and they do everything. They're they're just a few of those kinds of firms. I mean, they're
Mm,
big, but they're just a few of them.
yeah.
And the vast majority, say, of the 40,000 firms you just referenced, they all live in the long tail.
Mm,
And so our goal is to optimize our spot on the long tail, so that in a if you think about a Google search as a way that prospects would find us, which, as I'm sure you know and agree, happens pretty routinely now.
Mm-hmm.
If you said accounting firm, United States, I imagine that's going to be, I don't know how many millions of returns.
Yeah.
If
Plenty.
you say Greenville, that's better. If you say, tax strategy or forensic accounting or some other specialty, that narrows it, keeps narrowing it. And so the idea is do a reverse Google search in your mind. How would a prospect find you?
Mm.
And for you to come up first, I mean, apparently, I didn't really know this, but if you Google value-based pricing, our little firm pops up, sometimes as the first search return.
Nice.
Despite the fact, we're a very, very small firm in a big, very big ocean. So that's the principle. You can have a big footprint in your chosen area of expertise.
Yeah. And for you, a lot of people would know it relates to the content that you produce,
Yeah.
and that's a huge strategy of yours, which is obviously backed up by truth, which is why the authenticity of it would bring you to the first Google search, I imagine. So,
Yeah.
So positioning strategy, it's sounds marketing-ish, right? But it's really a business strategy. It's something you've kind of pointed out. That's true, right? It's really about how you decide to run your business.
Yes, I think broadly speaking, you could say it's a business strategy. One of my favorite models for business model. So that's one of those terms that gets thrown around incessantly.
That's right.
So what is a business model? So 3 things constitute a business model. You can think of it as a triangle, and the first point of the triangle is create value. So your firm needs to understand how it creates value. That's where your positioning strategy comes into play, because the two components of creating value are the solutions you offer and the markets you serve. So what you do and whom you do it for are the key questions around how you create value. So the other two aspects of business model are deliver value, and the third is capture value. So the deliver value piece is about having a good organizational structure and production model, and the capture value is about pricing strategies and those. But so I would say that's a holistic view of business strategy. The first of those 3 points, the create value, is really where the positioning strategy lives. And the two essential questions. I mean, Peter Drucker said this years ago. He said the first essential question of any business is, who's your customer? Right? You've got to be able to, and the answer can't be everybody.
Right.
Who's your customer? So, and then the second question is, what does that customer want to buy from you? So it's the questions of who and what. Though, if you've got to answer those 2 questions in a relevant, differentiating way to claim to be able to have a positioning strategy.
Nice. Well, and so that leads us to accounting firms. They notoriously do not want to do that.
Sure.
And I don't know if they would say what they want, but our profession does look very similar. We behave similarly. We physically look similar. We do some of the exact same services. And so is that, I mean, and lawyers probably do some of that too, maybe medical professional. Yeah. Why is that just the accounting profession, or that's every profession? Maybe I'm so soaked in it. Okay. Everybody's doing that.
Well, it's every business. I would say it's every business, because it's human nature to want to copy the successful business practices of your competitors. So that's why if you go to, at random, I mean, true even in the ad agency business, at random, go to any agency website and look at the language that they use to describe themselves. It's very similar to the next firm you're going to look at. And I have quite a large collection of this language, as you might imagine, and it's pretty disconcerting. The lack of, it's not really, it's not being courageous to put a stake in the ground. Once you understand the benefits of having a focused positioning strategy, it's just smart business. I mean, it's not a matter of courage and boldness and risk taking, although there is some aspects of that. I mean, I submit that professional firms are very risk averse. Accounting firms probably top of the list.
For sure.
And we run from risk rather than viewing risk as an economic positive. So, there is that aspect to it. But
yeah. Well, so okay, this is good stuff. So as we're kind of coming to the end, you've kind of led to this this last question, which is, how does a firm become bold, right? So it sounds like boldness to take a risk, to put those words on the front of the website, right? We do this only. How do people fight and combat that fear, or is there a way to help them do that?
Well, practically speaking, the experience I've had over the years that I've been doing this, the experience of most professionals, once they will claim a positioning strategy and be clear about it right up front on their website, they see the impact and the results almost immediately.
Wow.
They can see, wait a minute, this isn't a matter of us just being crazy and doing things that our competitors won't do. This is just smart business.
Yeah.
Because it produces almost an immediate change in their flow of leads and their flow of business, their
Nice.
success rate in pitching and presenting. I mean, I can't tell you how many emails and stories that I've heard over the years from firms who say, you know what, we just put up our new website last week. We just used the new positioning strategy in a new business presentation, and it felt great, and we won the business, and it's self-reinforcing. Once you see that positioning is an important point, by the way. Positioning strategy is essentially a new business strategy. It's essentially a business development strategy. It's how you go to market.
Wow.
So once you start seeing how powerful that is, that nobody has to twist your arm and say, you need to keep doing this. I mean, wild horses couldn't keep them from doing it. The firms that have experienced the success are adamant about the power of positioning.
Oh yeah. No, we've done it. We've gone narrow, and we're not considering going general, right? It's just not. You don't kind of go back.
You would
never
never
go back. No.
Right.
And I think it's just interesting that that there is a fear of narrowing. It's like you're closing doors, but when you open that door, there's so much depth to what you've chosen. If you've answered those two questions right, like what do we do and who do we do it for? The breadth and the width of that is so enormous. It's really hard. You've got a career out of it once you've done it, really.
You've got a complete career. Yeah. It's digging a few deep holes rather than hundreds of shallow holes. It's more professionally rewarding.
That. Yeah.
It's it's a more successful prospecting strategy, and you're going to have it circles back even to talent retention. I mean, the people that are doing what they're good at and see results at it versus working for bad clients who want a little bit of everything. It's just a completely different experience, even personally as a professional.
Yeah, I love it. Well, cool. So Tim, we're wrapping up. This is a great course on positioning. I know you've got days you could teach on this topic.
I do. Yeah.
It's massive. So how do people sign up for your blog specifically? That's what people need to be reading. It's so good.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, our blog is called Propulsion, and it's on our website at ignitiongroup.com. You can just scroll down at the bottom and subscribe to the newsletter. Also, the writing I do on LinkedIn, I try to publish as often on LinkedIn as I do on Propulsion. So that you can find on my LinkedIn profile.
Okay, very cool. And of course, for any listeners who haven't read the book Positioning for Professionals, that is one of the best books I've ever read, and still it's highlighted and underlined. It's the one I take. It's my sticky note book with all my sticky notes sticking out of it. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, I do. And that's on Amazon, of course.
Yeah, that's a great book. Okay. Well, cool. Well, Tim, thank you so much for coming on the Thrivecast. It's good to see you virtually. I wish we could see you in person sometimes, but there's just not a lot of traveling happening nowadays.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks, Tim. We appreciate you.
Thanks
Take care.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.